Does anybody know anything else about Theodor Herzl? I don't want to say things that you guys.
He's got a street named after him.
What do you?
He has a street named after him.
He has a street named after him.
In all the
Yeah, pretty much in every Israeli city you'll find.
Well, he has between 2 schools.
And 2 schools? How many streets?
No.
Okay. Anything else that you might know?
But the main street is other.
Yep.
I may be wrong about this, but didn't it take a while for people to really like accept some of the ideas he was proposing? Like at first he was kind of ostracized.
Not necessarily ostracized, but it did take a while for his ideas to sort of take hold. I'll just point out something that illustrates this point. He passed away in 1904. You guys know when the State of Israel was established? In 1948. Okay? So there was a good several years from the time that he passed away until his vision even started to become a real reality. So, but let's backtrack to figure out exactly where this vision came from. Theodor Herzl was born maybe into a station in life that's not so dissimilar to some of you guys. Now he's living in Europe at the end of the 19th century, but he's born into a not entirely secular, but very assimilated family in the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the city of Budapest. And he wasn't like a real religious guy. And he was, if you know about European history at that time, we're talking about the time of the Enlightenment, and suddenly Jews, this is like the Jewish Enlightenment that is called the Haskalah. Jews are suddenly liberated in a way and allowed entrance into universities and really becoming part of Western European society. And so he becomes well educated. He studied law and wanted to become a lawyer. And in his early life, and his early adult life, he started to kind of butt his head up against some institutional anti-Semitism that, for instance, in terms of his desired law career, he wasn't able really to realize that. So he turned to his other talents as a writer and became a writer, a newspaper writer. And he was sent at the end of the 19th century, he was sent to France to cover a huge, huge story that was going on that was called the Dreyfus Affair, we call it in English, where basically a guy from the French army named Alfred Dreyfus, a Jewish guy, was accused of treason. And he was stripped of his military ranks and imprisoned and put on trial. And think about, in terms of the attention that it garnered from at least the European world, I don't want to trivialize it, but think O.J. Simpson trial. You guys old enough to? Okay. So this is like a moment where I realize the difference in our ages. Okay, think about the O.J. Simpson trial and the way the world, or at least in America, everybody was like focused on that white Bronco and focused on the trial itself and the outcome of the trial. That's the kind of attention, that kind of level. So he was sent to cover this big story. And when he was sent, as the trial was going on, people were crowding around the courthouse to hear the results of the trial and all the goings on. And these crowds, these mobs of crowds, people were really like incensed, and they borderline rioting, like screaming and chanting. And what did Alfred Dreyfus find that they were chanting? They weren't chanting death to the traitor. They weren't chanting death to Dreyfus, but they were chanting death to the Jew. Okay? And for him, as someone who felt very comfortable in Western European society, this was a big wake-up call, especially because he knew a little something about the French-Jewish story. And of all of the countries in Europe, the French were probably the earliest to really start to accept Jews and allow Jews to be an integral part of French society and not just the other and kept, in kind of on the outskirts of society. And so suddenly, by witnessing and having to report on this event, the Dreyfus Affair, Herzl's perspective shifted altogether. And he started to see what he called the Jewish problem. Now, this is very different from what Nazis were calling the Jewish problem. But what he was sort of pinpointing as the Jewish problem was that we as Jews, wherever we are in the world, no matter how welcome we might be in a given country at a given time in history, at a certain point, something will always happen, or can always happen, that will suddenly shift things altogether. And suddenly our place in society will not be that secure.